Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was created by Bill. Bill recently shot this image on my Spirit of Whidbey Island workshop. Bill was working with a Canon 30D, a Canon f3.5 180mm macro lens. Exposure trio is ISO 100, f11, and 1/45th of a second. One of the things I like right away about this image is the potential for beautiful color depth. You could think about the blue and orange complementary color pair from the painter's color wheel, or in some places you even start to get a sense of burnt red. You could think about red and cyan from the printer's color wheel. When you look at this image, you see there's a pair of colors. It's really neat how the orange is sort of following the structure of these high contrast lines. So there's this real simple and graphic sense of a pair of colors, and then the rest of the image design is really based a lot on pairs playing off of each other. You have the V's moving on the vertical that are playing off of each other, these arcing negative space shapes on the outside, and then even these two ideas that come in. Not perfect formal symmetry. This V is bigger than this V, this side is a different shape slightly than this, so on and so forth. Still, there's a real strong sense of this idea of pairs playing back and forth in a very simple design. I really like the choice of subject matter here, not only for this design idea of pairs being framed up the way Bill has framed them, but there's also a structure here that pushes towards archetype. There's kind of the idea of X marks the spot. It's also, to me, the idea of sort of the double helix design that's in a lot of things. Get a sense here of antlers, horns. There's quite a bit of information here that can push towards an archetype. And I talk about this quite a bit, but today I just want to take the time to define that and mention a couple of other things about it. An archetype in photography, so much of the time we're going to be talking about a symbol that could be recognized collectively by everyone on the planet. We don't have to consciously recognize this. It could just be so known to us that it affects us on a subconscious level. Archetypes are also found in myths and stories, just in human expression. A smile is an archetype. So much of the time we're going to think about symbols because photography is a purely visual medium. Really encourage you to think about archetype when you're choosing subjects. If you're the kind of photographer who's concerned with the impact that your image makes. For some people they say, I don't care about that. To me, photography is just about documentary, or I'm not going to worry about design. The camera can just record something, and so I just react to it and I don't want to think about anything. That's fine. That's one way to do photography. But if you're actually concerned with design, and the Daily Critique is an ongoing class in the language of design, there's a whole nother level of information that goes beyond what's literally there. And there are lots of other levels of information, but one of those levels of information is archetype. And I just encourage you to think about archetype when you're choosing your subjects and when you're editing. What are the ways that you can push towards symbols that could affect people beyond what they're literally seeing? When I think about working on this image and maybe a perfect world variation, one thing that I have to say is this may be an image that Bill did not have time to finish. He may have submitted this very close to the way the camera created it. And let's just sort of make that assumption. Histogram even looks like that. A digital camera will create a file where the shadows tend to be very open. So a lot of times we don't have a true black point. We just have areas that are dark but no black point. And that'll have a hard time on the bright end recording detail. And this is really sort of a classic in terms of a histogram from an original digital capture. One of the first things that I'd like to do to this, if we're just thinking about starting to work on editing the image and having some fun now and pushing this in the darkroom towards another type of vision, set a black point. One of the things about setting the black point from a design standpoint is black is an anchoring value and an anchoring color idea. When we have black, it tends to create more depth in the image and more vibrancy in the image from a color standpoint. The other thing about black, going back to the idea of archetype, is black as a color idea. You could just, when I say the word black, you can think about all of the different things that happen to you from a psychological and emotional standpoint. Black is the color of death. Black is the color of emptiness or nothingness. Black has an enormous amount of power at the level of archetype, and so not only does it add depth, From a richness of value standpoint, a richness of color standpoint, it adds psychological depth. When I get to here, another thing that I think about is now that I have a true black, is playing these colors in a more exciting way, pushing the blue and orange color pair. I use selective color to first pop the orange and then to pop the blue, and so now we have more of a vibrant color. When I look at this image, I'll almost think about a canvas that's sort of being painted already, and how I could push this more towards color. So I pop the color idea there. Then I start to think, what about creating even more of a feeling of the depth in terms of form on this very flat field of information? So I came in and popped some highlight structure in here. And after doing that, I then came in around it and added some low end. And so in those two steps, I'm trying to create a feeling of actual depth there and relief and slow the eye down in that area. Then I came in and I did something that I really like to do a lot of times from a color standpoint. If I have a sense of just two colors, I love to add a third definite color idea, and we said there's the potential for primary red here already. So watch this. I'm going to add red, and you can see that red come up. That's before and there's after. And then I'm going to add a little bit of green. That's more subtle. And so was the idea of adding red arbitrary? No, I want to bring in the color wheel here for just a second and talk about color triads. If you're thinking about adding a third color idea, you know, we said in the beginning we had this sense of blue and orange. We could also think about red and cyan from the printer's color wheel, but we're on the painter's color wheel right here. If I want to add a third color idea to have some anchoring places of color that could slow the eye down, a classic triad would be picking a color that is close to one of the dominating color ideas. And so I chose red. So you can think about a triad that's close to or exactly Y-shaped on the color wheel if you want to actually add another color. And so I just wanted to mention that today. If we're open to, as we finish the image, pushing towards a vision that's personal instead of trying to push towards whatever we can remember about the scene, how we felt that it actually looked when we were there. Last step here is something that I do to almost every image that I edit, and that is to add a vignetting mask to contain the eye. And here's what the mask looks like. So you can see that it's sort of this classic darkening on the outside and lighter in the middle. And one more time, I'm going to turn this on, and there we go, off and on. Here's where we started, and here is where we ended up. The truth is, if you shot this on slide film, this scene, and underexposed it, it'd look closer to this final vision right out of the camera. But obviously I've taken the most liberty here with the color and bringing that red in and turning this on and off again. I hope that you can see how the red, being a third color idea, has the potential to draw the eye to those places specifically and hold the eye, and how that could hold the viewer in the image longer. And also the work that we have done has created the illusion that there's actually more relief here, that if you ran your hand across this, that there would be more of a feeling of texture on the rock than when we started. And that same thing is happening to the viewer from a psychological standpoint. As they look at this, they're experiencing more of a feeling of dimension and physical depth, and that can help to slow the eye down as it experiences this picture. Love to hear your feedback about the critique today. So a big thank you to Bill. This is such a simple and beautiful image from a color standpoint, and also just this idea of study of pairs of ideas. Say a big thank you to Bill for sharing the image with us, participating in the Spirit of Woodby Island workshop. I say a big thank you to all the people who support our workshop program, and I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. I hope to see you again real soon on the Mindful Eye.